Everybody, it's Elon, and we're back with an episode of Inside Fighting. This time we're going to be covering a martial art that I trained almost my entire life, since I'm very young, since I'm like 12 or 13. We're going to jump right in. It's on Filipino martial arts, specifically DOCE PARES. Stay tuned. I'm going to show some footage that I've never shown anyone before of me and my teacher, so it's very cool.
Pow, pow. Inside fighting, yeah. Dangerous martial arts. Pow, pow. Ooh, ah.
As always, before I get started, if you'd like to support this channel, I don't have sponsors. Just go to InsideFightingStore.com. I have a great instructional up there. I have some other cool merch up there like shirts, sweaters, mugs, whatever you want to get. Listen, the instructional is awesome. And it's a self-defense instructional on a system that has some of the stuff we're covering here today. And it is called RAID, Rapid Aggressive Intelligent Defense. And it's really a street effective system. If you don't like it, I'll refund you. You just hit me up. Your money's going right back in your pocket. All right, so let's jump into DOCE PARES. Now, Filipino martial arts has gotten a weird rep lately. It's either loved or hated. It had like this upswing after the Jason Bourne movies. And then it just kind of took a tank dive down because of MMA and how nowadays, if you can't prove it in the ring, then it has no value. Now, let me just first explain. Filipino martial arts is a very tough martial art to prove in the ring because it's primarily a weapon-based system. When we're talking about Filipino martial arts as a whole, I'm talking about Kali, Eskrima, things like DOCE PARES, Balintawak, Ilustrísimo. Today, specifically DOCE PARES, but as a whole, those Kali systems and Eskrima systems are designed to be weapon-based urban survival systems. Do they have empty-hand technique? Absolutely, but they're not a sport fighting system. If you want to see sport fighting in Filipino martial arts proved in the ring, there are systems like Yao Yan. I did a video on it, and those are martial arts that go out and are a combat sport specifically. There's a combat sport element to Filipino martial arts, but it is a weapons-based combat sport, even at that. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Chris Bautista. Chris Bautista is the grandson of the late Grandmaster Cacoy Cañete, who's the founder of Cacoy DOCE PARES. I think, personally, and excuse my eyes blinking a lot and being red, I have crazy allergies. But for me, my personal opinion is DOCE PARES is a very, very special martial art across the board. It's even special within the niche of Filipino martial arts. And maybe it's just the way I learned it, and maybe I was just very privileged to learn it this way. Let me put it to you like this. Think of DOCE PARES like the combat sports boxing version of sport martial arts, but it's more multidisciplined. It would be covering a lot more than just hands, but it has that philosophy of keep it simple, keep it tight. You have your techniques that you move, you have your footwork, and then from there, as much as possible, you drill and spar. You drill and spar, and everything has to become alive within that. The way I learned DOCE PARES, and I'll show you these videos, again, never shown these videos to anyone, is identical to how I've trained boxing. You have pretty much your shadow boxing, which are what we would call amara, and you're learning how to move the stick. Now you can do single stick, double stick, or the knife. Then you have your drills where you're actually reacting to people and it's alive, and this would be like pad work or mitt work like you'd see in boxing. And then we have sparring, and the sparring ranges from just putting on a headgear with a stick and going full contact to light touches into takedowns with ground sparring. I'll show some of that today. And then we have full wake-up sparring. Now, I'm just going to show this video right away. This is what I'm not a fan of. Okay, so let's just get this out the way. This type of sparring develops certain qualities that are okay, but it is very unrealistic. You're overly protected. That's how fast 4 wins martial arts. All right, well, let's just one more time watch it. This is just a video I pulled off the internet, but you can see this is wake-up sparring. Now, this is very popularized in DOCE PARES, and this is my biggest kind of criticism of DOCE PARES. What I will say is that Chris, when he first came to where I lived, he came from the Philippines. He had no protective gear. He just had helmets and sticks. He didn't even have gloves, which sucked. And he would just make us train with the gear that he had. And he only had like 2 or 3 students. It was me, my brother, and this other guy. And so he had a small enough group that it didn't make a difference. And we were kind of lucky in the sense that we got real authentic training without the extra padded protective gear. Now, as things evolved, he obviously got more into wake up. He made more money, got more students, and he had to make his training more safe. That's just part of the game. And so it did evolve into that somewhat. But Chris, let me just show you some of his movements just so you can understand how talented he is. Here he's just demonstrating some of those shadow boxing movements I'm talking about. So you learn a pattern and then you just practice it. He's going to show it from different angles. So this is like just a specific pattern that you learn. You can see how he whips the stick. His body mechanics were always so fantastic. Now, this is something very specific to DOCE PARES. These Witique strikes and these whipping strikes, and you'll see a lot of these abanico strikes. That's what they're called in DOCE PARES, which means fan in Spanish. And so the stick looks like it's twirling. A lot of people criticize this. Now, you have to understand these movements, even though they don't look necessarily like, oh, I'm hitting you once super hard, they hurt like crazy. It's hard to understand how much pain the stick generates, especially rattan is one thing. When you go onto like a kamagog or a hardwood, it is a heavy hardwood like what you would get in a cane. It is brutal. It will kill a man. So all these strikes that you see that you underestimate have a ton of value when they're put into the context of what would you really be holding, a cane or even a rattan stick or whatever it is that you're actually holding. Now, I want to show, again, so that's like one part of the training. Now, DOCE PARES is a multi-discipline system, meaning it covers everything. It covers empty hand, it covers knife, it covers takedowns. There's part of the system because Chris's grandfather, Kakoi, had trained Aikido, had a black belt in Aikido and Judo. There's something called Escrito in the system, which is like Judo Aikido, but with a stick. And so the way I learned it, and let me just see if I could find a video here. Let's see if this is one where we go to the ground. But there's the progression of training you'll see. Here's just, we're demonstrating some of the techniques. But with us, it quickly became alive. And this is the nice thing about DOCE PARES. Your training quickly becomes about reactive drills. So this is just a friendly feeding drill for us to feel different angles. And now it starts becoming a little bit more aggressive. I just hit him there. He didn't like that. And so it's going to become a little bit more. You can see how fast he is. I couldn't get a hit on him if he was really trying to whack me in the head. So you can see it's starting to get a bit more aggressive here. Now we're turning into, he just knocked me over. And at this point, I was probably a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I was able to sweep him. And it's going to go off camera. I'm going to get the stick and chase after him with it. But that's how we trained. We would train a lot. I think there's another one right here. We would train. Oh, so this is great. This is a sparring drill. So this is, again, how we learn to spar. Everything here is alive. Let me just explain. He's throwing one strike. I have to react to the strike, clear the blocking hand, and then hit him in the head. So one more time, if you look at how, and this is a great drill to practice if you do Filipino martial arts. Block, counter, hit. Block, counter, hit. Now, and it's with a clear in the middle. So I block, clear, hit. See, I hit the hand. I'm just demonstrating here. Now, what's important to note, everything here is, man, I have no tattoos yet here. This footage is honestly like 15 years old. It's crazy. But what's important to note here is that everything is reactive. We don't train in a way where it's like step one, step two. Here we're already starting to fight. What you see here, these beginning parts are friendly entries into the takedown portion of fighting, which is the end goal. So we're just trying to feed each other, get some light disarms, but we're not really going for it. We're not trying to hurt each other on the feet here. The entire point of this drill is when you see the opening, find it and go for the takedown. So here I pushed him off. We're starting to get close to each other. That's why we're not trying to get so much crazy footwork, because this is what it's going to evolve into. And I think he cracked me in the hand there, which is why I was laughing. But see, now it becomes alive, and now we're actually fighting. Once we start getting into the pocket, if you can break, you go back to the drill. But then when you can enter, he had my neck here. I actually remember this because this cranked my neck really bad. We used to just randomly film ourselves fighting. But I got out. He's trying to do a shoulder lock. I get on top. And this is why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very important. But it's nice to train it with a stick, because what you still get is the basics of having like knee on belly, good mount. But when you spar with a stick or a weapon, a knife, you become hyper aware. It changes the way you fight. So again, it's just really interesting to see the evolution of the training in the system. Here, I think he's demonstrating, again, an aliveness drill. Everyone I show these drills to can pick them up so quickly. That's the thing that's fascinating about DOCE PARES. You're parrying, and then he's going to start feeding, and I have to counter every single thing that he's doing. But again, we're just parrying, 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 and then it becomes alive from here. I've had students who after like 3 months get so much better. Here, let me fast forward. They get so much better at martial arts across the board because their hand awareness and everything that they're doing in both hands, because you get good with both hands in Filipino martial arts, me tell you a story about Chris. I don't know if this is, something he'd want me sharing, but his arm was pretty much slashed really bad, his right arm. And he had to use his left arm for a long time and became amazing with it because his right arm was so scarred up. And I think he became better with his left hand than his right. He went back to using his right, but he's won world championships. He's trained people in the military. And again, I know people look at these drills and they go, oh, this is stupid. This isn't how a real fight happens. No, but it's entirely reactive. It's entirely alive. Nothing here is planned. And if you start developing these instincts, you'll see it translates into fighting when you put on the headgear and spar. These are drills meant to create reflex. This is where, and I'm just now explaining the panantukan drills, hubad lubad, all that stuff. These are drills that a lot of people, again, have grown to hate. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame because these specific drills are incredible for developing those qualities that I just told you about. Here we're doing just panantukan empty hand drills, or pangamot drills, if you want to call them that. And this is, again, just to feel and feed handwork. So do I spar like this when I put on gloves or when I want to fight somebody? No, I don't. But has this helped my striking tremendously? Yes. Chris also did kickboxing. He did Yao Yan style kickboxing, so Filipino kickboxing. Now, whenever someone comes to grab my neck in a clinch, you see these reactions here. This has developed me the reactions to really kind of hit that hand off and right away come in. Anytime they're coming to grab my neck. Anytime an elbow's thrown at me, I put my hand up. It's from these early years. Like I started with him when I was 12 or 13. It's those early years of development all the way up until here where I was just comfortable reacting to anything being put in front of my face. Again, I know that people criticize this stuff, but these drills are actually incredible. And it's a shame. It's a shame that people can't appreciate these styles anymore that really develop a certain kind of instinct and a certain kind of reflex. It's really hard to find teachers like this also. But what I will say is if you can find an effective Filipino martial arts instructor, a good instructor, you're in for a treat. I don't care if you're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't care if you do Kyokushin. I don't care what style of martial arts you do. There is nothing like it. It is a class of its own in martial arts, and it will benefit you, and it will change the way you work, and it will change the way you see human anatomy, understand the body, and understand flow and human movement. It will make you a better martial artist. I cannot say enough good things about DOCE PARES and about Filipino martial arts in general within this category, the Eskrima category of martial arts. They've made my life much better. And again, one thing I'll say about this as well is longevity. In DOCE PARES, you see guys who are 80 years old, 85 years old, and they're still whipping that stick around like crazy. Again, this is entirely alive, entirely reactive. You do this every day, and then you put on a headgear and you spar. You will be very dangerous with a stick. You'll be very dangerous with a knife. You will get better with those weapons. It is a segment of fighting that is widely ignored. Okay, now I just wanted to show some of this footage today. I thought it was very cool. I want to now get into the philosophy of DOCE PARES. DOCE PARES actually means, and I should have covered this earlier, 12 pairs. Because for every movement in DOCE PARES, there are a total, for every set, let's say, there are 12 things. So there's 12 strikes, 12 blocks, 12 counters, 12 disarms. It's all based on the 12 pairs. So DOCE PARES. And here he's just going so fast. And when you realize what would I do against a stick if the guy was moving that fast, you realize you would just die. And so another thing also that makes DOCE PARES, let's just go over all the details. This is like a hard video for me to make. I could literally go on for hours, but one of the things that makes DOCE PARES different than some other systems is it's one of the systems that really treats the stick like an impact weapon. Balintawak does this too, but I'll cover Balintawak in another video. I have some issues with Balintawak. What you find in DOCE PARES versus Balintawak, let's just go back here, see what this video is. What you find here, some knife drills. And it's the same idea as before. He's going to stab at me. I'm just going to slash his hand, counter, clear, and stab. Now, this is, again, not real knife fighting. I have to preface, this is a drill. This is not how a knife fight actually happens, but this is just building reflex. We did work with shock blades too. We would get shock blades, and you would attack each other and see if you can actually defend the knife. Okay, so it's not to say that this is everything that you train in DOCE PARES, but the aliveness aspect, the drilling is far above almost any other system I've done. It's just a huge majority of your training, and then you spar. There's very little like, I'm going to hit you here. You're going to slow motion counter 12 times over here. Then you're going to step over here and do this. No, it's I'm going to hit you with the knife, or I'm going to stab you with the knife, or hit you with the stick. You're going to react. You're going to try and hit me. I'm going to block it or parry it, and you're going to clear that and then hit me. And we're going to just keep doing this until it turns into something that's alive. And then from there, it will naturally progress into sparring. And by the way, sparring is a natural progressive of aliveness drilling. That's an interesting thing that no one talks about. So you look at aliveness drilling. Aliveness drilling is basically a way to spar at the lowest probability of injury. As you increase intensity and you increase impact, your likelihood of injury increases. So what you want to do is spend a majority of your time on low impact, reactive aliveness drilling. So you're still reacting to something, and then naturally progress because you'll come from a calm state. You won't have a high state of stress. When you do this kind of training, you're relaxed, you're moving, your body learns in a different way. When you increase the pace gradually, so if we go from a 1-for-1 drill into now 1-for-2, now you can move a little bit different. Now it starts becoming alive. What you realize is the stress doesn't come up with it. The stress stays low as the techniques and as the movement evolves, as the impact comes up. You can still maintain a low level of stress, and your sparring is much better. You're much more flow stated. You're much better. You're much more smooth. You see things differently, even though the pace has increased, the intensity has increased, and the impact has increased. And so that's something that I learned in Filipino martial arts, which I think is one of the most important things in sparring, is to be able to keep your stress level low so you can see things in the heat of battle, in the heat of a fight. And I got that from this. You get it from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too, but you get it in the segment of ground fighting specifically. Like these systems do give it to you, but if you learn to flow in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, really high-level guys, they flow even when they're sparring hard. That's the amazing place to get to in martial arts, in my opinion. To have a clear mind, to have reduced stress, to have open vision while also seeing exactly what needs to happen, all while the other person is fighting hard. For me, DOCE PARES did that. Now, again, I'll just finish off by giving a little bit more about the system. Like I said, 12 pairs. They treat the stick like an impact weapon. It's not a machete, but there is machete and sword work in DOCE PARES. There's knife work. There's a lot. It's a close quarter combat system. So one of the main differences from Illustrissimo, and I'll do a video on that too, which was a major influence on my martial arts career, my martial arts journey as well, was that if you look at Illustrissimo is a very long-range system. DOCE PARES is a very close-range system. Even when they have a long-range weapon, they fight you here in your face, because if you look at the Philippines, there's a lot of stuff that happens in alleys, a lot of stuff that happens in close quarters. And even if you had a sword or a knife, you would have to learn to fight right here, right where your body is, right when the fight happens, face to face. In my experience, I've learned that this is a reality of fighting. When I talk about knife grips in DOCE PARES, and I know I've criticized this a lot, we would use reverse grips, right? We'd use ice pick grips. So the knife would be pointed down. And I always say, and we'd even sometimes fight with it hidden back here. And if you looked at some of the drills I did, that's how I was holding the blade. And now I criticize that a lot, because I say you should always have it in a traditional grip, and you should have it lead hand, and it should be forward because of range, right? You want range. But when I give that, there's a stipulation. There's a stipulation that I had time to draw my knife while there was still range between us. If you're this close to me, if we're face to face right here, and I pull my knife out, I'm not pulling it out lead hand close to you, because I'm never going to be able to damage you with it in the way that I can if we're right here and I sneak it out right here, and now I can generate a stabbing or even a slashing movement from back here, like a cross, like a hook. That's my power hand. So when we're close, if the fight breaks out right here, I don't mind an ice pick grip rear hand. I need that space. I need to be able to move to generate force. Okay, so one more thing I'm going to say that's very different between Balintawak, in my experience with Balintawak and DOCE PARES, is DOCE PARES has a follow-through mentality. DOCE PARES believes the strike has to come here and generate enough power to damage you. It has to come through. It has to be chopping. Okay, now when I did Balintawak, a lot of the time the way you train is you're feeding the stick. This is the fault. This is where drills go downhill, and I think this is where people lose their, joy of a martial art, or lose what they believe is effective about the martial art. A martial art loses its appeal when it sacrifices the reality of its technique to make itself more friendly to drilling. In other words, if we're going to drill and all I'm going to do is place my stick like it's a punch in your face, I'm not learning proper mechanics for a stick, and I'm going to end up using the stick in that way. If I'm unaware in my drilling, like if you look when we were sparring, we would always allow at a natural pace the fight to get close enough that we would start doing takedowns. Because if you're not training takedowns with the stick, if you're not training clinching with the stick, if you're not ending up in those positions, you're missing out on where fight naturally progresses to. I was lucky that Chris allowed fights to progress continually until the end of where they go, which is from long range to medium range to close range to clinch to takedown to ground fighting. If you can cover all of that in your drilling and sparring, you're a complete fighter. Will you be the best at all ranges? No, but it's very important that the reality of your movements and that the reality of your drilling still fits within the reality of what's going to happen out there on the street, which is people will get close, they will grab you, you will clinch with the stick, and you do have to generate enough power when it's out there to just end the guy with one hit. All these looping strikes I talked about, I said they generate enough force. They work because if you look at when he's doing them, if you scroll back and watch, he's still whipping his whole body. He still has the right body mechanics to generate force. So again, DOCE PARES has that. Again, I could go on for hours. I'm not going to. I hope you like this video. I'm going to cut it off over here. Let me know what you think about DOCE PARES. Let me know if you've trained DOCE PARES, heard about it before. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. And what I find is very unique is that a lot of DOCE PARES schools are the representatives for the Yaoyan academies in their area too. So there's some kind of correlation there as well. And it's just the way it happened with us as well. Sorry, my crying eyes from these pollen allergies. Go ahead, look at me. I'm crying. You got to support the channel. You got to go to InsideFightingStore.com. Thanks so much.